Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Parliament of Geeks, where we answer one simple question. Be it weeb or be it scrub. I still can't get my soundboard to work. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have two of my good brothers here in the temple. In the blue corner, we have our flamboyant flyer and living Wikipedia. Good brother Flutter. And in the red corner, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zadari Enterprises would like to remind you that, we fucking called it. What, you might ask? The answer could be yes, but in this case, the answer is Final Fantasy 16 on the PC. Suck it!
And I feel like I should give myself a pat on the back for the amount of restraint, because I have gone out of my way to not look at any media for 16 so I don't get spoiled. Aside from when we looked at those trailers, that was it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about 16 still. Mm-hmm. So, hey.
I just know that we had a laugh that what we ended up designing for the yokai for FF Legend isn't far removed from the dominant in that game.
Well, it's closer to Clive, from what we've been told.
Yeah. I just find that amusing because it's a case of convergent creativity, since Lord knows we didn't plan it that way.
Stuff.
But
since neither of us fucking played the game, and we designed the yokai probably a year before it came out.
I know that we had the concept sometime, at least a few months before we even saw trailers of the concept.
Yep.
But with that said, since my soundboard still doesn't want to work for me, no skull chant this time around. Sorry, but this time around, the focus is on asking and answering one simple question, and that is form, truth, and reasoning. Now, I will admit for this one, this is another case of the very fascinating world of anime in the mid to late 2000s. A time frame that I've talked about a lot, that I feel gets disrespected by a lot of anime fans of our age because of the fact that they're too busy watching stuff from the 80s or 90s one-handed, if you catch my drift.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, anything not from the 80s or 90s, that particular crowd spurns, thinking that only good stuff came during a certain magical span of years, which doesn't match reality. Mm-hmm. If I haven't made it clear, I have an absolute disdain for nostalgic thinking. But this is the first time that we've covered a spin-off of sorts. Because this week we have Mononoke on our hands. Now, technically speaking, this is a spin-off, but I wouldn't consider the source material something that you need to watch per se. It can certainly be an enjoyable watch that gives a little bit more context, but it's not like it's not a spin-off where the source material is a necessity. Since the source material, Ayakashi Samurai Horror Tales, was an anthology work. You're not going to get a lengthy story with anthology works.
No, you aren't.
And Mononoke, even though it is a spin-off, is still somewhat of an anthology on its own. The premise focuses on one titular character, the medicine seller, and as far as a real name, no one knows. He is just and always will be the medicine seller. And if you ask him, that's all you're going to get from him. The other thing is it taking place in the in-between period of the Edo and Meiji eras, where merchants were still at the lowest class. And it's appropriate that we're talking about this because this is going to be getting an anime film trilogy starting sometime before the year's out, with the second film coming out next year.
Yeah.
Now, there have been a few mangas, but this is not a manga that got made into an anime. Now, as far as where to get it, I do believe it is on, at the very least. I think Retro Crush has it.
It's on Netflix. It's on Netflix too.
All right.
I can check.
That's how I caught up after the week I missed.
Mm-hmm. The director in question is Kenji Nakamura.
It's on Netflix and it's on Crunchyroll.
Yep. Who has previously done things like he was an episode director for the 2003 version of the Big O, so the follow up. He was an episode director for The Soul Taker, which is on the list. He was a assistant director for Shinzo from 2000, which was a interesting beast. He was a series director for C, or C, The Money of Soul and Possibility Control, which is an interesting beast in and of itself. As well as a script, storyboard, and episode director for Kameno Zume, one of Yuasa's projects, and thus fucking weird. He's also done 2 Gatchaman spin-offs, or at least been involved with them: Gatchaman Crowds and Gatchaman Crowds Insight. I haven't seen those 2, so I couldn't comment on them. He was also responsible for he was also an assistant director for the Diaboromon Strikes Back movie.
Oh, Revenge of Diaboromon.
Mm-hmm. And was a storyboard and episode director for Karas.
Something we've covered here before.
Mm-hmm. Apparently he was also a director for Transformers Combiner Wars. You know, the first part of that Prime Wars trilogy from 2016.
Mm-hmm.
But what is kind of amusing looking at his work is we end up coming back to works that we've covered in the past or talked about in passing. Originally, he started out as an animator, but because of a case of tendinitis, he moved into being a director. These days, he's freelance as a director more, and he hasn't really done much in the way of animation in decades. But with that in mind, Zan, I will let you take hold of handling the introduction to the world of Mononoke.
Alrighty. So the world of Mononoke is at a time, at least when we start, just before more modern times in Japan. It's the end of the Edo period, before the Meiji Restoration and Meiji period, all the way up into the Taisho period. It does eventually go into the Taisho period, which is interesting. But it is a world of the modern beset by the world of the folklore in many cases. Things that are trending and new, still existing upon that which came before. Within this world, there is a man who travels around and sells medicine. Our main character, the medicine seller. He is mysterious and somewhat foreboding to many people. Almost alarming in some cases. But he always shows up where he's needed or going to be needed. He deals in many medicines, but the medicine he deals in most of all is that which cures ailments of the soul, specifically the evil spirits known as Mononoke. Now, the way he describes Mononoke are ayakashi that have become embroiled with human emotion and the human psyche, trauma, and other aspects of people, and are starting to manifest in order to take out this traumatic emotion on the people around them. It is with this in mind that we also have a very beautiful art style that emulates in some ways, as you can see from the splash image, ukiyo-e paintings.
Yep.
This art style, combined with some very striking sound design, only lends to the unearthly feeling of every story in this series. And the first story we start upon is called The Story of the Zashiki Warashi. Now, I have to stop here and say that in Japanese folklore, when you look up the Zashiki Warashi, it is not actually a Mononoke. It is an auspicious yokai, a yokai that brings luck and fortune to a family, so long as it is essentially fed red bean mochi and red bean crackers. It's a child spirit that makes sure that a family home and thus the family line within that home has good luck and good fortune as a clan. And the status of a Zashiki Warashi can determine whether the fortunes of a family are turning, because sometimes not even they can maintain what is needed, and because of that, they start getting sick. Now, I won't reveal what it should be called until later, because that's, well, revealing too much. Mm-hmm. But as we can also see on the screen, the medicine seller holds a strange baton almost looking item with that little demonic face on it. This is the Sword of Taima. And that's important because Taima is one of the names for a Shinto prayer item. You may have seen them in other folklore, a long piece of sacred wood with two paper ribbons on it, used to purify. The Sword of Taima, by that name alone, is an item of purification. But in order to use the sword, the medicine seller must first investigate the Mononoke and find its shape, its truth, and its reason. And in so doing, he can then become the other half of the form that you see on the page, with the darker skin and the golden, I would call them tattoos, but I don't necessarily think they're tattoos, golden makeup, and can use the sword to exorcise the Mononoke. It is with this that he enters an inn wanting to rest, but also because he's already kind of determined that there's something wrong with this inn. This story plays out more actively when another guest shows up, pregnant woman who is seeking shelter because she's being chased and is going to die. Someone's going to kill her. And they put her in the one room that nobody ever goes in. It's said to be a storage room. Throughout all this, she's plagued by visions of Daruma dolls and weird toddler or infant-esque children. But it's only from here that the unearthly nature of what's going on in this inn continues. These Daruma dolls, these small infants, start manifesting more and more, rattling the inn, and eventually trap the innkeeper, her right-hand man, this pregnant woman, and the medicine seller in that room, and even kill the innkeeper's right-hand man. It's actually revealed that this inn, through a series of very surreal moments, that this inn used to be a brothel, and that the room therein used to be the forced abortion room. Because whenever a whore gets pregnant, she can't be pregnant because that's 10 months of not making any money.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, having a kid is a drain on money. And in many brothels prior to modern day, women were paying off debts by being a part of a brothel. So the room was also full of a bunch of these little drawers on the wall, which had urns and dharma in them that were full of the cenotaphs, because I'm pretty sure they didn't keep the remains of the babies actually there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for anyone who doesn't know, a cenotaph is a grave marker for a grave that has no body.
Ah.
But essentially, these were cenotaphs to all of the aborted children. And so the aborted children are themselves the shape of this Mononoke. The truth of the Mononoke is that they are the aborted children of whores in an ex-brothel.
An inn that is now in the form of a brothel.
Well, brothel that's now the form of an inn. Strike that, reverse it, Monk.
Yeah, my bad.
And their reason is that they want to be born. They want to live. They didn't want to die. But before the medicine seller can exorcise them, the pregnant woman stands up and says, "I will be the mother to all of them." Which, the medicine seller is like, "That's not really a good idea. You shouldn't do that." He says it much more calmly because he's very... Would you say he's laconic in the way he speaks, Monk?
I would say so, especially since he... rarely do you see him raise his voice regarding anything.
Yeah. And he tends to express things in as few words as possible until he has to explain what the Mononoke is about. Like, he speaks in small sentences until he's determining the Mononoke itself. He's very low effect, I believe is another way it's called. He tends to keep his emotions very flat.
Mm-hmm.
Until he's throwing out his talismans and getting the sword ready to exercise the Mononoke.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't get to exercise this one. They kind of self-exercise when they realize they can't all be born through the woman, and they're happy she even offered to be their mother. But she eventually does recover from this traumatic experience, and it looks like she's going to have her child in that inn, after the innkeeper has also been killed by the spirits. Now, what I think this Mononoke should have been called, because it's actually a described evil spirit in Japanese folklore, and especially in relation to Shinto and Buddhist purification rites, is a mizuko. Mizuko is the word for a miscarried, stillborn, or aborted child.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the Buddhists, they have an entire memorial service for this called Mizuko Kuyo, which is used to assuage the spirit of this unjustly snuffed out life that had no chance at all. It's a very heavy burden, especially for the Buddhists who perform it. I'm sure some of them have some very emotional stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because, especially in Japan, pregnancies are low. And people who go to have kids generally want them. Abortion is not a very big thing in Japan. At least in modern day Japan. But the Mizuko as a yokai is very, very malicious. It wants to take out the fact that it was not given a just chance at life on everything around it. So That's why I think it should have been called Mizuko instead of Zashiki Warashi.
Yeah,
But
even back when I first saw this, back when we had just fan subs of it, the term for it didn't sit with me because Zashiki, and you probably explained this earlier, Zashiki Warashi are certainly playful spirits, but they're more of pranksters and bringers of good fortune for a household.
yes, as I said, they not only are they pranksters and bring good fortune, they're an indicator of fortune. They tend to live in a storage room or a parlor, and they are they are indicators of family fortune, which is why you feed them. They usually have their own little altar or area that you can put down the what was it called? I'm trying to think of the word. Azuki-meshi. Azuki being red beans.
Mm-hmm.
So the sweet bean paste that everybody likes. Azuki-meshi is basically like Azuki-meshi literally means red bean food, but it's usually a type of red bean cracker or some red bean mochi that is then put on a dish. And if the food is eaten every day, the family will remain auspicious. But if for whatever reason the Zashiki Warashi has gotten sick and the food is not eaten, it's an indicator that there is something bad that is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that respect, we don't get to see and Dragon, it's not so much that the medicine seller is composed. It's not like he's holding himself upright or anything. It's more like he talks in a very flat way that's slightly off-putting, which is why I said more flat effect than anything.
And there is a recurring thing with him and the way he carries himself is that there is something that's not completely right about him.
Yes. And I'll get into why that might be way later after we've reviewed the show itself somewhat. I would also like to point out that this is the Edo period, meaning that the extremely strict class ladder made by the Tokugawa shogunate is in effect. We constantly see that the medicine seller is treated as lesser throughout the entire show. And that's because, according to the class ladder made by the Tokugawa shogunate, merchants are at the bottom. And the reason for this, if you're being generous, is that, well, all they really do is sell goods, which does contribute to the economy, but not much more. If you're looking at it in the more literal way that it was meant, it's these guys are parasites who only sell other people's stuff and are not actually craftsmen who add to society. That was the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Merchants were seen almost like parasites, social parasites. Because the Tokugawa, and I think that mostly had to do with Tokugawa's dealings with the West. He didn't like them, which is why he locked them all down to Dejima for the entirety of the shogunate.
Yeah,
but
and that almost bit him in the ass
at one point. But the big thing here is that what we see is the medicine seller always seems to know more than he lets on, for one. And for two, he's always suspicious of everything. Which is never more certain than in the next story of the Umibozu.
Yes, which the Umibozu, they were and this is something that's going to happen a lot, where this is not a lolcalization, as it were, but but because of how a bit of a familiarity with the supernatural end of Japan is recommended if you're localizing something like this. There's some things that didn't quite get in translation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd also like to point out that we don't actually ever see the Umibozu yokai in this entire thing.
No. Umibozu is probably one of the more famous yokai, and I think there was a question that was brought up to me in the past regarding this series, and that is, what is the difference between a Ayakashi, a yokai, and a Mononoke? Also, I'm getting an echo from somebody. It might be you, Flutter.
Weird. Hold on.
Now, the simplest way I can say the difference is it's complicated. But if you want the simple answer, then you should be watching the Trash Taste podcast, not us.
Well, I'd also like to point out that the story that they tell about the Huna Yude, or the ghost ship,
Mm-hmm.
and the lending a ladle thing, in many folklore, Umibozu and the Huna Yude are considered similar or the same. So while we never saw like Umibozu as it's described, that being a giant black humanoid being rising from the water,
Mm-hmm.
we did get giant eyes and a black sky and a very large flying ghost ship with fishbone chains.
Mm-hmm.
And we even got technically an Umi Nudo, I think it was. You've got an Umi Hoshi, which was the one playing the lute there, making people experience their deepest fears. But that's slightly getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The story of the Umibozu starts out with the medicine seller and a bunch of people on a ship. And
A very
one of the
top-heavy ship.
a very weird-looking ship, yes.
It looks like a mansion that just got glued onto a boat.
Which, funny enough, is kind of how merchant vessels actually looked at that time in the Edo period.
Mm-hmm. This is just a bit exaggerated because
As a lot of ukiyo-e and sunie drawings tend to be.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a vessel taking these people to another port, owned by a very wealthy man. So wealthy, he put an aquarium inside the ship to have his very expensive fish in.
Which is quite a flex.
Yeah.
A flex and fucking stupid.
Then again, don't you remember the old saying, "A fool and his money are soon parted"?
Yes. But the important thing about this story, besides that of the fact that it's one of the Mononoke stories, is that one of the passengers, Kayo, is actually a character from Ayakashi Samurai Horror Tales, from the Bakeneko story that the medicine seller first appeared in. So the connection between the two is even more firmly established, as if it wasn't already firmly established from the medicine seller being where he is. There are some other people aboard. There's a Shugendo. For those who don't know what Shugendo are, they're a sort of combination Buddhist, Shintoist, mountain folklorist type of ascetic sect.
And I ended up saying he is way overdressed for an ascetic.
And then I had to point out that the Yamabushi of most Shugendo are dressed in bright yellow and gold brocade.
Yeah, I dialed back, but his speech pattern reminds me more of a kabuki play.
Yeah, but I mean, that's Tomokazu Seki being Tomokazu Seki. Let's be honest there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if I want to be perfectly open here, I'm going to post these in Sacristy. This is some of the things that Yamabushi and Shugendo wear. This is some of what Yamabushi and Shugendo wear. It's not like they're just wearing pure white and nothing more. There's plenty of color and vibrancy to it. And I believe that even some parts of the costume are considered to be living talismans, living scripture, meant to evoke the type of to evoke the bodhisattvas, the kami, and the mountains themselves to assist. Because I think a lot of people don't realize, especially about a lot of East Asian religion and folklore, is that people who take this seriously take this very seriously. You might think that you might think that a Catholic monastery or Catholic priests and nuns are fairly serious about living as if they were following in the footsteps of Christ himself. These people live to become a part of what they are evoking. They are no longer themselves. In fact, I believe that some of the most numerous kamikashi and some of the most famous kamikashi, spirited away. He's actually referring to people who go into the mountains to go to the kami. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this.
Yeah.
And the entire act that they're going on with the Shugen, we have the Shugendo, we have this weird samurai who has a famous sword. He's kind of weird. We have two Buddhist monks, one an actual monk and the other being an apprentice. And of course, we have the owner of the ship and the ship's captain. Oh, and it's Umizato, excuse me. That was the name of the guy, the Ayakashi. The people are there going, just trying to make their trip to the next port. But someone in the middle of the night affects the path of the ship by affecting the compass it uses to chart its way, and steers them into what is essentially the Twilight Zone or Bermuda Triangle of Japan, the Dragon's Triangle it was called, where it's a sea of Ayakashi. It's a sea of, It's a sea of terrible things that are there that will destroy humanity, or at least destroy humans. And they're beset by, as I mentioned earlier, a giant floating ship that almost pulls them into the sky. These weird giant eyes that look down upon them. Giant anchor chains made of dead giant fish bones. And even the appearance of the Umizato, who asks them what their deepest fear is. And when they think about it, he plays his instrument, and it inflicts it upon them. Which, watching it happen to the medicine seller was fantastic, because his deepest fear was not knowing. And so he faded into the void. It was an interesting thing, and he was just laughing. He wasn't freaking out. But we find out in the end that the one who put down the magnet was the respected Buddhist monk Genke, because he was trying to go out to find his sister Oyo, who went out in a sealed boat, a hollow boat. Urabutsune, which is a form of sacrifice used to appease the sea kami. He also explains that he loved his sister more than a brother should, and that his sister loved him more than a sister should love her brother. There was this long tragedy he described where she stood in his place for him being the sacrifice, and that he was going to kill himself after she went out in the boat so they could both be joined in death, and things of this nature. And the medicine seller is like, "You're a liar. Yeah, that's all a lie. The truth of this matter, and the reason that this Mononoke exists, is because you pretended all of this so that you could further your success as a monk. And now you're trying to bury the evidence." And the guilt is what was really tearing at him inside. And the hollow boat was shown to them, but it was also, just full of a corpse. The sister was already dead, and it was not the Mononoke. The Mononoke was the guilt of the monk itself. And this is the first time that we actually see the medicine seller turn into his alternate form and use the sword of Taima in full.
Mm-hmm. We got a glimpse in the first story, but now we see the full transformation, which is, even after seeing years of transformation stuff with hero anime, this is definitely a unique one.
His transformations get more and more unique as the time goes on, too. Like, this one first has him, go through the mirror to become his other self. Mm-hmm. Which, for some reason, the fan base calls Hyper. I don't know where they got that name. So, take that with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
But the Sword of Taima manifests this giant blade of scintillating light to cut through the Mononoke and purify it. And in so doing, not only does the medicine seller release the Mononoke from the monk, and the monk actually stops looking like an old decrepit man and looks young and handsome for some reason. But the dragon's triangle, the sea of the Ayakashi, is purified as well, because it all sprang from this one Mononoke. After that, we move to the noperable, or featureless person, featureless thing, which is the most chamber play of all these chamber plays. Shall we be honest here? Because these are all a bunch of chamber plays. This one is the most chamber play because it all takes place in one person's head.
There's also the fact that it's presented in an act structure, so so even more on the nose when it comes to the whole chamber play thing.
Yep. And it's a very confusing story if you're not paying attention. A woman is arrested after having killed her husband and her husband's family. And is, put into the same cell as the medicine seller. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But she says she did it, but the medicine seller is like, but you were convinced by a Mononoke to do it. And eventually a Mononoke in a no mask, that is a fox's mask, shows up to free her and help her get away from the medicine seller. And it's revealed that what actually happened is the man in the mask appeared to her and convinced her to kill her family. But then and he even took the medicine seller's face at one point. But then, in a stroke of genius, the medicine seller says, if I say that something is my face, whatever it may be, it is my face. He had drawn on the equivalent of a Japanese simple smiley face made out of letters. It's called the Heno Heno Moheji. And that's because it uses three 3 he hiragana, 2 no hiragana, and a mo hiragana to be the eyebrows, eyes, nose, and mouth of a face. It was pretty clever. But through this entire play, what the medicine seller does is he reveals to this woman that no, not only were you the one who killed your family, and not only was this guy not the one who helped you, but you didn't even kill your family. You killed yourself. Your internal.
And I remember talking with JT a long time ago. And one of the things that I brought up because he was asking, she killed herself. He was trying to make sense of it, and I brought up a question that the medicine seller was asking repeatedly. Who did you kill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see that she actually had this terrible upbringing where her mother forced her to be, or at least try to be, the perfect Yamato Nadeshiko wife, so that she could attract a husband, and her mother would be exonerated for having a girl child, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really fun is even at the end of everything, when the Mononoke in the No Mask disappears, and everything sort of resolves, the woman's back in the kitchen in her husband's house, like nothing has happened. And then the medicine seller shows up, and she's gone. And there is an implication that this whole thing was the medicine seller drowning her in illusion so that she could break out of how she had killed herself and leave. That nobody actually died, that nobody was killed, that there was no Mononoke attack, and that all he had done was bring medicine for the soul to a soul who needed it. Like I said, the medicine seller deals in medicines of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very interesting. Yes, Dragon. It absolutely was the most trippy story.
Then again, with this anime, do you have any idea how little that narrows it down?
Yes, yes. That is the response that I expected from Monk, and honestly, the response I had in my head. But moving on from the Nopperabo, we get to the Nue. Now, again, the translation is weird. They translated it as chimera. A Nue is if you look at it in the most surface level technical terms, yes, a Nue is a chimeric creature made up of multiple parts of different creatures. A monkey, a dog, and a snake. And a tiger. There was also some tiger parts in there. But a Nue is not a chimera in that respect. Nue were kind of described that way because the idea of a Nue is an unknown evil hidden in the grass and trees. So when you see a glimpse of it here or there, you see a snake slithering towards you, or a tiger prowling around you, or a dog ready to charge you, or a monkey swinging through the branches. It's the classic blind men and the elephant story, just supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this story kind of smells funny.
We'll get there. But additionally, a Nue are associated with thunder and lightning pretty commonly.
In fact, we've covered a Nue when we talked about Karas, and he was very much all about lightning.
Him and his brother, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this story starts with a talk about a woman who is the head and sole remaining heir to a famous incense clan. People who listen to the scents of incense.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask how that works. That's just what it's called. And she has an inheritance that is being passed down through her line that she is willing to pass down to her husband, but her husband has to win the incense game. Four men go to become her husband and take place in the incense game. A courtier from the court named Osawa Robo, a samurai who's kind of a country bumpkin named Muromachi Tomoyoshi, a fishmonger, a guy who has actually a very big fishing empire, or so it's said. So he's kind of rich, named Nakarai Tansui. And a fourth man who we don't learn a lot about, named Jisonji Konari. These four are to arrive there, but only the first three really show up. And the medicine seller shows up as the fourth suitor's place. They have these incense-smelling competitions based on the tales of the Genji and the chapters therein, based on which scents smell the same to each other and which ones don't. And you have to use these wooden blocks to make a pattern. The details are not super important. What is important is after they finish the first round, the lady herself, Lady Ruri Hime, is killed. And the medicine seller wonders why she was killed and why the other suitors want to cover it up and still marry her posthumously. They reveal that it's not really the incense school and her technique that they care about, but the fact that this place has a piece of holy wood known as the Todaiji that is rumored to grant its owner the world. And so the medicine seller says, let's have a second contest and I'll be the one to preside over it. At that point, you know the medicine seller is about to pull some fuckery.
Yeah.
Now, as they go through the incense, each of them smells, they're doing a different competition where they have to determine whether this scent is the same as one of the first two scents he makes or different altogether. And he also says, oh, by the way, I accidentally included a poison. But don't worry, I don't think any of you should get it. And as he goes around giving these incense smellers to them, it reveals something. When it gets to the samurai, the smell is like blood to him, almost. Blood on paper. And the medicine seller says, well, yes, I thought it was a smell that you'd be familiar with, since you killed Jisonji in the other room.
Yeah.
Which drives the samurai crazy. He stumbles around and then, unfortunately, self-deletes on accident.
Which, the reason why this kind of thing made him crack is in part due to the fact that he very much felt like was very much out of his league when it came to this smelling competition. And just the way the game worked, he was completely out of it and was getting shit from everybody else because, you know, even though he's a samurai, he's treated as a country bumpkin.
Because he's not a court samurai.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then, when it came to the fishmonger, it turned out that he was the one who killed Yurihime. And then finally, when he revealed the last part to the courtier, it turned out that all 3 of them were already dead. All 4 of them. In fact, everyone in this place, besides the medicine seller, was a manifestation of the Mononoke Nue.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead.
And not just Yurihime, but the old servant of Yurihime, a young girl that people had seen running around, some dogs that had been seen, everything was a manifestation of the Nue. And the Nue was generated by the Todaiji itself, because the Todaiji is not actually a super powerful piece of wood that grants its owner the world. That's just a legend. And is it's also a reference to the Rannatai in the Shosoin room of Todaiji Temple, thus the name of the Todaiji.
The Shosoin room being the treasure room of the temple.
Yes. Where holy objects are kept ensconced in safety, and so that the kami can remain within them forever. And then he has determined the shape and the truth and the reason of the Mononoke and cuts the wood in half, which releases all the tortured souls of its victims. And it shows this beautiful scene of everybody having what's essentially a cherry blossom viewing party and being happy.
Mm-hmm.
Because these people had been long dead. Not just kind of dead. Like, the 4 suitors hadn't just died. They had died months ago. They had headstones on the property. Where their sword and everything, the sword and everything else from each one of them was.
And
yeah.
it is worth noting that the Todaiji there is a Todaiji temple in Nara.
Yes.
And supposedly the wood that's referenced here was in the treasure room of that temple.
Yes, I mentioned that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I will say there's a small part of me that wonders if the writer of Food Wars got inspired watching this particular arc. Because when it comes to the smelling scenes, is that really all that far removed from the foodgasms in Food Wars, especially early on?
I think
it's visuals.
I think it's more subdued in Mononoke Monk. Like,
yes,
they turn color and they remember things, but they don't. Their body does not uncontrollably shake. But I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Now, side note, I would like to mention that the Todaiji Temple is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the historic monuments of ancient Nara, along with 7 other sites in Nara, and has the world's largest bronze statue of the Buddha, who in Sanskrit is Vairocana, also known as Daibutsu in Japanese. And it's a very important place. So that's why I mentioned it. Now, on top of that, we finally get to the Bakeneko arc, which, if you'll remember what I mentioned during Umibozu, a Bakeneko was the thing that the medicine seller fights in Ayakashi in the original show, in Samurai Horror Tales, when he's introduced. So this is treading old ground for him, in a way.
I'd also like to point out that this was another case of someone gaffing the translation, because they referred to the Bakeneko as a goblin cat.
Which I suppose if you want to, that translation is accurate. But Bakeneko more means monstrous cat. Because the bake in that is the same bake as you would hear in bakemono or monster.
Mm-hmm.
I believe specifically the bake in bakeneko and bakemono is something to mean like vicious or feral or otherwise, something. I would actually have to look it up. Actually, no, I'm not gonna fuck myself by saying I know for sure. I'd have to look it up. Fuck that. I will look it up right now. In fact, because I am not stupid. Japan Dictionary, let me know. Because it's the first kanji, so.
Mm-hmm.
It actually has to do with something that has been transformed or take the shape of something to metamorph. Something that is bake or bakeru is something that can be described as being disguised. But when combined with other things, it means a thing that has transformed. And a bakeneko would definitely be like a transformed cat into something monstrous. But the final arc takes place much later than the rest of these other arcs. It's implied that this is like the 1920s, especially since we have telephones.
I think that would make it take place in the Taisho
era. The Taisho era. Yeah, it'd be after the Meiji Restoration and into the Taisho era. Which is from the end of the Edo period into the Taisho era. If I... Give me a second. I'm being Flutter right now. So the Edo period ended in 1868. And the Taisho period started in 1912. That's almost 30 years just from there alone, but it's in the 1920s, so the second half of Taisho, so it's over 30 years from when the last stories could have possibly taken place,
and still looks the same and looks even more out of place than he did before this.
Yes, the medicine seller looks untouched by time. He looks like he is like he hasn't aged, and he's wearing the exact same clothes that he used to. Which is, well, interesting. Very interesting. And this is where I want to, before we get into the actual story for the Bakeneko monk, this is where I want to get into my theory that I talked with you about.
Mm-hmm.
So in Shinto, there is an idea of an object that attracts and contains a kami in a physical space, so that they can occupy it and be either auspicious or malicious, depending on the kami and their attitude at the time. This is called a yorishiro. It's an object that contains a kami so that people can worship it. Anybody who's watched anime has seen a yorishiro at least once, especially if you've seen something like Inuyasha. The tree that has the shimenawa, which is that braided rice rope, with the shige, which are the papers, hanging from it. That is a yorishiro. And
I'd say if you played Sekiro, you saw an even bigger yorishiro to the point that it could pick you up.
That thing was a yorishiro made of shimenawa. Mm-hmm. It was made of the braided rope. But yes, it absolutely contained a kami, otherwise it wouldn't have taken you up to the Celestial Palace. But yorishiro, when they actually house a kami, at least when it's an object, they're called shintai. However, there is a case where people get possessed by the kami. And there are two primary cases. One is kamigakari, which you'll often see translated as a divine revelation, because the god comes down into the person, speaks their piece, leaves. It's a divine revelation. But there's also yorimashi, which literally stands for possessed person, and is implied that the kami is just going to live there until, well, the person dies. Usually of old age, because, well, the kami living there doesn't necessarily mean the kami is killing them. Now, I made this theory because I have watched a different show with a very similar name, I might add, called Mononogatari. It's like taking Mononoke, cutting off the K, and adding Gatari to the end, which Monogatari means legend, so Mononogatari means, I would guess, malevolent legends. But the actual the English translation for the name is Malevolent Spirits Mononogatari. And they specifically deal with a type of yokai known as Tsukumogami. And Tsukumogami are everyday household objects that have tools, like an umbrella, or a fan, or a paper folding fan, or an old apothecary grinding wheel for grinding medical powder, are inhabited by kami, have become shintai, that are not held sacred because nobody knows that. And it's usually like the folklore with a Tsukumogami went that it needed to be a tool that had been used well for like 100 years. And the parallels between one of the main characters of Mononogatari, Botan Nagatsuki, or Nagatsuki Botan, who is a Marebito, or is possessed by Marebito, which is a divine being from another world. Specifically in the case of Mononogatari, a divine being from the world of the dead. Making her a Yorimashi. She is a Yorimashi. And she is being protected by people because they need to suppress the Marebito from taking her over and using its divine powers to tear open the world of the dead. That's a different anime, one that I also suggest people go watch, but it's too long because it has 2 seasons, so we can't do it here.
Yeah.
But the medicine seller is ageless and has a very different form that he uses to deal with the Mononoke that also behaves very differently from how he behaves as the medicine seller. And my idea here was maybe the medicine seller is a Yorimashi. He houses a kami that does exorcisms against the Mononoke, which is why he also has access to the Sword of Taima. Because that thing is definitely not just some relic he got somewhere.
It's a divine instrument.
Yeah, it's absolutely a divine instrument. And there's a reason that nobody else can use it. But with that in mind, we get to the story of the Bakeneko, which takes place on a train line. Several passengers on this train, and the medicine seller himself, are eventually all confined to the first car on the train. This includes the train conductor himself, the mayor of the town, a journalist who knew a woman who died, the woman who died herself, who was also a journalist, is, well, I'm sure you can already guess, but it's also implied from the very opening, so this isn't like any stretch of the episode, that this dead journalist is the Mononoke. But they're also confined with a police officer, who did the investigation and who was also the mayor's bodyguard, a waitress from a cafe, a widow, and a milk delivery boy. This is kind of random at first, until you realize that all of them, in some way, shape, or form, knew about the journalist's death in some way, shape, or form. And this is probably the other exceptionally trippy story. Not that any... Okay, let's put it this way. If Noperable is a 10 on how trippy Mononoke gets, Bakeneko is a 9.9. Nue is a 9.5. Umibozu is a 9.3. And really, the most normal of them all at a 9 is Zashiki Warashi. They're all a fucking drug trip.
We are ultimately grading on a curve here.
Yes. They're all a fucking drug trip, and they're all fantastic.
Yeah, wait a second.
But as it's revealed through this gigantic confrontation with the spirit of this journalist, and the fact that she wasn't actually dead when her murderer threw her onto the tracks, and a little cat was licking her blood and her face when they both got hit by the train, is what caused her to become Bakeneko. And each of the people who was pulled in is someone she perceives as at least somewhat responsible for her death. Starting from the least important, that being the waitress, Chio. Because she never actually saw the murder. She just made up some stories about the girl when she gave statements to the police so that she herself could try and get famous. But then we get to the next least important, the widow. She heard the moment that the journalist Setsuko was pushed off the bridge to her ultimate demise, out the window when she was visiting her lover, because she's a widow, so she can't remarry even in the Taisho period. So she needs a lover in secret. And she ignored the scream. Then the milk delivery boy, who saw from a distance what happened, but just dashed away as fast as possible because he was scared out of his wits. Then we get to people who are a little more... and I guess the police officer who did the questioning would also be considered one of the lesser responsible people, because he didn't know who did it and just kind of closed the case without much more than saying, oh, it was a suicide. But then we get to the people who are a little more responsible, such as the train conductor, who, due to poor rest on his end, wasn't paying attention, was yawning and tired, and hit the girl, hit Setsuko, when she was still alive, technically. In horrible, terrible pain, having been choked out and thrown off a bridge, but still alive. But it's the last two, the mayor and her journalist superior, who are the most responsible. Because she discovered that the subway that was being built, where this train is, was it was evidence of collusion and corruption from the mayor's office with the constructors of the subway and the subway companies. It was all people shaking hands and washing each other's money. And she presented it to her superior, who then called the mayor because he thought it'd be more important and would get him more recognition to get on the mayor's good side. And the mayor told him, okay, get rid of her and the story. I don't care how you do it. And so the man responsible for her death, directly so, was her journalistic superior, Kiyoshi Moriya, who first said, hey, this story is good. Let me see the manuscript. Takes it, starts burning it in front of her. She's like, well, I've still got stuff back elsewhere. He's like, nope. Chases her, grabs her, chokes her out, throws her off the bridge. And then she gets run over.
Mm-hmm.
He dies. He and the mayor actually die. Everybody else technically escapes. But before that happens, the Bakeneko gets pissed off at the medicine seller because he interfered. Because he stepped in and tried to solve things. And we get the coolest version of the medicine seller fighting a Mononoke, because it lasts more than a couple seconds. Because he gets drawn into the Mononoke's alternate space, wherever it is, in his transformed form, throwing out talismans, slashing with the sword, fighting giant Bakeneko arms and legs, and eventually cutting through. It is an actual action sequence in this whole thing that's been pretty sedate thus far.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just great. And after he exorcises the Bakeneko, and the two who were killed are killed, and the rest survive, we see that the three who were less responsible, not counting the policeman, he doesn't show up again,
Mm-hmm.
but the milk boy, the widow, and the waitress all show up to the bridge with memorial bouquets, or some sort of memorial item, to remember that this woman had tried to do good and was punished for it. And that they also need to be able to do better. Because that's really the spirit you get from them, that they should be better people now.
Mm-hmm.
And then the medicine seller sees them all gathering and cryptically talks about how so long as there is a shape, a truth, and a reason to find, he will continue to confront the Mononoke wherever they are.
Which he already kind of hinted at, because when Wakamoto, let's not beat around the bush on the matter.
The Umizato?
Yeah, which is voiced by Wakamoto, so that's what I'm going to call him.
Okay.
Asks everyone, what do you fear? He had said that he fears the truth. He fears a world without form, truth, or regret.
Form, truth, or reason.
Yeah, I still have the original fan sub version stuck in my head, so that's gonna happen.
And I would argue that the fan sub was actually wrong here, because kotoari definitely has to do with reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's method of thinking. Now, at the end of all this, I do have to mention something that pisses me off. In the new movies that have been coming out, the original voice actor for the medicine seller,
Leave it at the door. I'll grab it in a moment.
Takahiro Sakurai, was replaced for the movies because last year it was discovered that Sakurai had been having an affair with the writer on his radio newscast. He's been married for 20 years. He's been having an affair with the writer for 10. The writer didn't know he was married somehow and thought that they were going to get married. And he was replaced on 2 of his projects, one of them being Mononoke, because of it. People may be asking me, why am I pissed off about this? Because him having an extramarital affair does not reflect in any way on him being a voice actor. That's like firing a truck driver because he drinks milk.
Yeah.
The two don't connect. And it's fucking stupid. Now, I will say, the voice actor they have gotten to replace him, Hiroshi Kamiya, is a really good voice. If anybody has ever watched any of the Monogatari series, such as Bakemonogatari, etc., he plays the main character, Koyomi Araragi. If anybody watches One Piece, he plays Trafalgar Law. If anybody watches Durarara, he plays Izaya Orihara. If anybody watches Noragami, he played the main character Yato. He plays Nozomo Itoshiki in Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei. And Tieria Erde in Mobile Suit Gundam 00. he's played a lot of really good roles, and he's a very good voice actor. So I have no doubt that he did well as the medicine seller in this first movie that just came out, and in the second one that'll be coming out next year. Now, I just have to say, when you look at the art on the movie poster for the new Mononoke movies, the medicine seller looks different. Pretty different, in fact. There's a lot to be said about it, because before I had seen the poster, which Flutter had posted in our monastery Discord at one point.
When I found out that this was that was getting a second movie.
Yeah, I did not know that the art was different and that the way that the medicine seller looked was different. And I had already come up with my theory that the medicine seller was Yorimashi. And now, with a new voice actor and a new medicine seller style, it almost makes it seem like it's true, because a Yorimashi that is that proactive about expelling and exercising Mononoke would make the vessel suit him, which would be as close to the previous medicine seller as possible, even if it's a different person. So I was like, ha 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 ha, my headcanon has more to justify it, even though I know it's a headcanon and don't insist on it being a real canon, because I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, the movies are likely to be very good, and I'm going to judge them on their own merit. Just because Sakurai has been fired for stupid reasons is no reason for me not to enjoy the anime. And also, they didn't fire Sakurai from his more important roles, like Cloud Strife. Oh yeah, for those of you who didn't know, he's Cloud Strife. Has been the Japanese voice of Cloud Strife since Strife was being voiced. So Square Enix was like, "You have an affair. You could still be Cloud. Cloud technically almost has an affair, right? Almost cheats on his love with Tifa with Aerith for a little while, right?" That is a joke for anybody who doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And the reason I say for anybody who doesn't get it is because I know that both Clotties and Clarets will get on me for that statement from either side, and I'm going to tell you both, suck it. I don't care who your OTP is. I know who I support, but that doesn't matter here. Suck my dick. Anyway, with that in mind, we've kind of lost the monk. I'm sure you all heard him talking in the background with somebody in his real life. Because, the monk has a real life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the monk. He's back.
Oh, welcome back.
With that in mind, monk, I think we're ready to move on to final deliberations.
Yeah. So
Now,
go ahead.
Now, Rick isn't here, and I don't know if Rick gave anybody his assessment.
He didn't give me it.
Did you bully him, Flutter?
Give me a second.
Is that in restaurant time or real time? You didn't say it fast enough this time, Monk, so I had to. I assume that Rick would probably give it a weeb.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be pretty into it when he was with us,
Yeah.
but I don't want to say that for sure.
Excuse me.
If you get a response from Flutter, Rick, let us know, or from Rick Flutter,
Mm-hmm.
strike that, reverse it. Now I've done it.
Yep.
If you get a response from Rick Flutter, let us know. But I will start. Oh,
Huh?
What do you give it a week, Rick? Get the fuck in here.
Wow.
Oh, he gives it a weeb. Okay, yes. Okay, my assumption is correct. Fine then. Rick, by way of the fucking chat, gives Mononoke 2007 a rating of weeb. In which case, Brother Flutter, what do you have for us?
The story is an interesting anthology story. The art is beautiful. The music is amazing, and for those of you who were interested in supernatural stories, you will all enjoy this. I give this a vote of weeb.
All right. Brother Flutter has given us a weeb. Monk, I turn to you.
Mm-hmm. So, this is a very interesting beast to come out of Toei Animation. I will admit that I consider it a blessing that a dub of this anime was never attempted, or at least none that I'm able to find.
There is a dub.
Which is odd because when you look at the credits, I don't see anything on that. The credits on the wiki just list the seiyuu.
Weird.
Perhaps it's best we ignore the dub. Maybe it's been memory hold for a reason.
Yeah, this is much like, say, Zetsubo Sensei. This is an anime that cannot work dubbed because it is so rooted in Japanese mythology. Even the visual style, which we've kind of hinted at here and there, is leaning heavily into that exaggerated ukiyo-e style of woodblock painting, which is going to be one of those things that some people are going to like and some people are not going to like, much in the same way as the art style of, say, Gankutsuo, the living quilt that anime was.
Yep.
I enjoy both, but I'm also aware that for some people, the visual style is going to be a little bit unorthodox for them.
I also argue that something we reviewed on here, Tatami Galaxy, had a very unique visual style that was hit or miss for people.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just going to be par for the course with anything Yuasa does.
You're right.
When it comes to this anime, because of the fact that it's set up in a series of mini arcs, it actually makes it an easier watch. But I sometimes wonder if it was an easier watch at the time when it was released week to week instead of watching it in batches, because we have covered some anime that are best to be spread out and not binge watched. Mm-hmm. That being said, the individual stories, like episodes 1 and 2, 3 through 5, 6 and 7, 8 and 9, and then 10 through 12, I think binge watching those individually is going to be better for you than binge watching the whole thing at once. But depending on how much of an addict you are for action, that's also going to determine things. This is, at the end of the day, a mystery story. If somebody is a big fan of Detective Conan, I'd be willing to recommend this to someone. Because I'm pretty sure that's an evergreen remark, because I'm pretty sure I could live to 100 years old and Detective Conan will still not be finished.
Yeah. Okashi daro. For anyone who doesn't know, that's his catchphrase, which I don't know how they translate it in English in the English parts of Detective Conan, but if you were to translate it directly, it's "Huh? Isn't that strange?"
But for me personally, given the only arc that I'd say is going to be the hardest for some people is the first one. Everything else is going to be relatively easy.
Yeah, aborted children in brothels is a kind of hard hard subjects to swallow for some.
Yeah.
And yet, if they had swallowed it, never would have happened.
Ha.
Ah!
But with that said, there is no way in good conscience that I could give this anime anything but weeb. Just from the visuals, from the unique kind of storytelling it's doing. It may seem experimental at a glance, but it is anything but that. And I'm glad we're getting a movie trilogy. Originally, I thought we were just getting a movie.
And we already got one movie, and the second one's coming up.
Yeah, though I don't think that movie's been subbed yet. It's probably not going to be subbed until early next year at the rate these go.
I will have to check. But with Monk, we have now 3 votes of weeb. As for myself, yes, the art style is fantastic, and the design of the medicine seller just proves to me once again that all Takahiro Sakurai plays is Cloud Strife in different roles. Everywhere I've seen him, Cloud Strife that's selling medicine and killing monsters. Wait a minute, isn't that what he already does? Not the selling medicine part, though, I guess. I could go through his entire filmography and be like, that's Cloud Strife doing X. That's Cloud Strife doing Y.
Didn't we already do that when we talked about Seven Knights?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we did. I honestly don't remember. And, of course, the wonderful... Exactly. That's entirely the point, Dragon. That sort of story, the Zashiki Warashi story, is one that's going to be hard for people to swallow. And like I said, if they had swallowed it, never would have happened. A joke so nice, I said it twice. But there's also the storytelling that everybody has gushed over. The thing is, we didn't go into too much detail, but when you watch it, there's a lot of lamp shading going on. If you're looking closely, you can catch what's going to happen. And that's always the hallmark of a good mystery. That you're not quite sure up until the reveal, but if you're paying close attention, the reveal, you can go, aha! I knew it! But it's not obvious. You worked for it. And that's the important part. And then something these two knuckleheads forgot to get into, the amazing OST. The OST was not this overblown thing or this triumphant crescendo type thing that you would expect from action anime that we've talked about before. No, it underlines things. It's haunting and ethereal when you're in a dark and scary moment. It's inquisitive and whimsical when you're getting to the point where he's basically doing his Phoenix Wright impression. But most of all, the opening and the ending are utterly beautiful. We watched them, we did our normal thing where we watched them once at the beginning of the week, every week. Mm-hmm. But we never felt like they had overstayed their welcome. Because not only was the music fantastic, the visuals given with each were marvelous and evocative, and also tied into the stories. But with all of this said, and even with some of my issues with later management of some talent, Mononoke gets nothing less than weep from me. I would recommend this to anyone. And I have recommended this to friends who are shonen battle anime dumbasses who don't watch anything else. And some of them have watched it and gone, dude, that was cool. What's more like it? And I'm like, ha 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 ha, I caught you. You're mine now. But with that said, we have 4 votes of weeb, none of scrub. Which means this Parliament finds Mononoke 2007 to be weeb.
So, as is tradition, it is time for us to spin the wheel and make the deal.
Wheel of morality, turn, turn, turn. Tell us a lesson that we should learn.
Alright, And we're spinning, and we're spinning, and we're spinning. You're gonna laugh at this one, Zen. How about a little Knights and Magic?
Just suggested this one last time!
That's the way the wheel works.
Damn it!
I also just recently rewatched it like 2 months ago, so... I think we're good. Knights and Magic is good. I can do Knights and Magic.
Mm-hmm.
For those who don't know, Knights and Magic is a mecha show!
Uh-huh.
We haven't covered Mecha fully, in my opinion. I know we covered Mazen Kaiser's Skull, but that was only 3 episodes. No, not 3 episodes, 6. So I'm not sure if I'm willing to count that as
No, it was 3
Yeah.
episodes.
It was 3 episodes, and are we really willing to count that as us covering Mecha in the usual
No.
sense? Because I'm not willing to do that.
No, this is a full-on, I think, was it 13 episode? 13 episode mecha series?
Yep.
I'll check in a second. I'm pretty sure it's 13.
Now, if it's not 13,
It'll be 12. It's one of those two. I know that for a fact.
yeah.
Like I said, I just recently rewatched it.
And we try to keep it.
Yeah,
we try to keep it to 12
13
episodes.
episodes.
Yep. We try to keep these to 12 episodes, but if it goes to 13, we're not going to lose sleep over that. We ended up going significantly over that because we had to cover the OVAs when it came to real life, but that was a very special circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Because you actually had an ending. Those OVAs actually give you an ending.
So
And
it's
sure
one
as hell
of
not gonna
it's one of
skip over-
those
over those
it's one of those
cases.
kind of cases. But with that in mind, that is going to do it for this particular episode. I will be back doing a couple interviews tomorrow, and of course, next time around we'll be covering Knights and Magic. But of course, there is still going to be Geek Watch, which will be very interesting for us, and probably stepping on some toes, like that's ever stopped us. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.